Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. What do you think happens when you allow an idiot to make decisions? Well, the result is always a failure, because idiots should never be allowed to make decisions. We always know that the wrong decisions will be made, usually the worst possible decisions, because in the mind of the idiot, what sounds good means it must be right, but often isn't. And that's the problem Shona Robison had. She seems to think that the thing she does is right and proper and will work. Because when you are a bear of very little brains, such as Shona, these ideals sound wonderful on paper. It's reality, of course, that causes all the problems. She seems to think that she's going to have all this money to spend, even though they're 1.5 billion, or possibly as much as 2.5 billion, in the hole. But hey, she's mitigated against that by putting the taxes up. Taxes which, of course, will not come anywhere close to what she thinks she's going to raise. And she's done all these other cuts in the important areas like health and social care and education, and yet raised funding for independence and seems to think that that's a good idea. Well, the councils have looked at the numbers and they quite honestly disagree. They say the funding is not sufficient, that the poverty gap will grow, and that councils will be forced to raise council tax anyway. Oh dear. Idiots making decisions. Let's have a look. So, poverty gap will grow, warns council leaders in the latest SNP budget backlash. Shona Robison's budget has come under further scrutiny from council bosses who warn of the impact on the poverty gap. The longer and the deeper people look at what she's proposing in her budget, the worse it gets. Now people are sitting there saying, well, look, we said we're going to need 350 million minimum just to maintain a council tax freeze. Now, that doesn't increase the spending that we have on the obligations that we have to spend. That's just simply to keep budgets ticking over as they are. And she's given them 130 million in the budget. It's nowhere near enough. And so things have to be cut, or council taxes have to go up. They are the only two options. And councils that are not SNP councils have no obligation to listen to what the wise one said at his speech. And they can just put them up anyway. He has no control over them. He has no control over anything. But even SNP councils have no obligation anymore. After all, it was Alibaba who broke the Verity House agreement. And so they don't have to listen to him anyway. And I think this is what's going to have to happen. I think that a lot of councils will just ignore the council tax freeze request, for it is only a request, and will put up the council tax anyway in order to maintain the services that they are legally obliged to maintain. But please, can we not allow anyone with an IQ of 86 to be making decisions? Anyway, council leaders have warned the poverty gap in Scotland will continue to grow unless more cash can be found for local government as part of the SNP's budget. Claims from Deputy First Minister and biggest idiot Shona Robison that the Scottish Government is supporting public services, including those delivered by councils, has been undermined by the council body COSLA, because it's got the facts and the truth on its side. It's looking at the numbers, and regardless of what goes through Shona Robison's tiny walnut-sized brain, reality has this habit of telling politicians, "You're morons," which in the case of the SNP is entirely accurate. This is their second intervention, following claims that the promise of a fully funded council tax freeze will not be met with current proposals. Nowhere even close. If they wanted a 5% across the board, they needed something like 310 million. Although inflation over the last year has been higher, and they wanted a real terms increase, and some councils looking much higher than the sort of 5%, they would have needed upwards of about £1 billion to be spent across the board on the councils. And for them to give them 130 million is clearly not enough. Imagine going to your mortgage provider or your landlord if you pay rent and saying, yes, I know I need to pay £1,000 a month, but look, here's £100. I'm sure that'll be fine. Yeah, I'm sure it'll be fine until you find yourself kicked out. And that's basically what's happening now with councils. Anyway, the group has said now that tackling poverty in Scotland will continue to be a significant challenge. By that they mean impossible. And they've warned that as the funding stands, communities will see and feel a range of negative impacts. Everything will be cut to the bone. Everything will be closed. Any non-statutory spending will have to go. They have certain things which they are legally, must provide. They'll provide them if they can, and everything else will be cut. People thrown onto the dole. Literally cannot afford to pay their wages. That's how bad it's going to get. And for some councils, they may not even be able to meet their statutory costs. In which case, the councils basically throw their hands up in the air and say to Westminster, and this is the thing, they say to Westminster that we are bankrupt, and it will be Westminster having to stand in and fill the differences. Now, for the SNP, that has got to be absolutely embarrassing to the point of resignations, really. But will Shona have the ability to resign? Of course not. She hasn't got the sense. Anyway, councils have been seeking a minimum of 300 million to cover the cost of keeping council tax bills unchanged. However, MSPs are still to vote on the details, and there is a chance that they will reject the budget. And if they do that, both Alibaba and 86 will probably have to resign. She needs to go anyway, honestly. Thick as two short planks. Anyway, local authority leaders discussed the proposed funding settlement at a special meeting just before Christmas in the wake of Miss Robinson's budget statement to Holyrood on December the 19th, where she showed everybody how amazingly stupid she is. And uncaring. 30 million taken from the mental health budget, but 35 earmarked for foreign pretending embassies. Kind of not right, is it? Anyway, in a statement released on Wednesday, COSLA made clear there is dismay and frustration from Scotland's council leaders about the way local government and the communities we represent had been treated, is their words. COSLA, which represents all 32 of Scotland's councils, has now written to Miss Robison raising its concerns, and its president, Shona Robison, is seeking an urgent meeting with her, saying, "Give us the cash, woman." The Verity House agreement, which I mentioned earlier, signed between councils and the Scottish Government after Alibaba became First Minister, has a focus on tackling poverty, but COSLA warned the budget settlement is disappointing and will mean its preventative work will have to be limited severely. But of course, that Verity House agreement was broken by Alibaba and no longer stands. They've got no obligation anymore. He broke it. Move on. It's gone. It's finished. It's history. Screw him. COSLA said, specifically on poverty, the budget should have had a focus on tackling the root causes of poverty, particularly the impacts on children. And this would have needed greater prioritisation of the work councils do in prevention and early support. Well, good luck with that. That's all I can say. Anyway, meanwhile, services to help children and young people in care as part of the commitment made by the Scottish Government, known as The Promise. But for them, promises are like pie crusts, made to be broken, aren't they? That'll now be under threat as a result of the proposed Scottish budget. And the state, they went on to say that tackling poverty in Scotland will continue to be a significant challenge when councils do not have the resources. It's a failure of what do you expect? Of course it's a failure. That woman hasn't got enough sense to tie her own shoelaces. She sits there, she's got all these choices, and she says, I know, we'll pump money into independence, we'll cut it from everywhere else, we'll lie to people, we'll spin, we'll tell untruths, and nobody will notice because we know the people of Scotland are really stupid. And they think they're going to get away with it. Well, of course they don't get away with it because people aren't stupid. Nobody is as stupid as her. Except your average SNP voter, of course. Anyway, rounding off, coming up. So there you go. Poverty getting worse. Services getting worse. The NHS failing left, right and centre. But hey, there's plenty of money for shiny brochures. Well done, Scotland. This is what you're voting for. Your children aren't getting educated. Granny isn't getting fixed in hospital. You can't see a GP. You're starving. Your money's gone. But hey, independence is still strong and thriving among the about 25 to 30% of people who would actually vote for it. But then they're all very stupid people. Thank you very much for watching. Do please hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, leave a like, leave a comment, please share the video. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, and for heaven's sake, vote these people out every opportunity. Bye.